So Tim, thanks for having me here. This is actually my, I think, fourth trip to New Orleans in the last couple of years since Pandora started to grow. This was sort of an obvious destination to come to, so I've definitely developed an affection for New Orleans. It's nice to come back here. I thought I would tell you a little bit about the sort of background on the company, sort of how it got started, and how we kind of meandered our way into becoming a radio service, which actually wasn't the founding idea behind the company. And then talk about the legal sort of / legislative issues that we've confronted. And you know, if you have particular questions, like, don't be shy. Let's have a conversation. I'd be just as happy just discussing stuff with you as sitting up here pontificating. So as I'm rambling along, feel free to interrupt me at any point, and you know, I'll dive into any area that you guys really want to spend more time on. So I founded the company in January of 2000, about 9.5 years ago. The service that you all know as Pandora launched about a little over 3 years ago, but we've been working on the kind of underlying infrastructure to it for almost a decade now. I'm a musician. My background is a performer and composer of music. I spent a long time playing in bands, and I wrote music for film and commercials for a while as well. So I came to this from the musician side, and really the sort of inspiration for me behind founding this was to try and use technology to make it easier for artists to build careers by sort of having access to some kind of cost-effective means of mass promotion, which has kind of been historically the biggest hurdle for musicians. The sort of founding idea was this thing called the Music Genome Project, which is what powers Pandora. And the genome is this enormous musical taxonomy. It's a collection of musical attributes, about 400 of them, that we've compiled that sort of collectively describe a piece of music. So they're every detail of melody and harmony and rhythm and form and instrumentation and so on, all sort of broken down into the most basic pieces. And we've had a team of musicians that has been as large as 60, is currently about 35, whose job at Pandora is to listen to songs one at a time and literally score them along 400 attributes, assign numbers to all of these musical details. So kind of like capturing the equivalent of musical DNA. The idea sort of behind this was that if you were a trained musician, you could look at these 7 pages of 400 attributes and the scores and kind of hear the song in your head, kind of get a sense of what it sounds like. And we've been sort of very deliberately and very slowly building up this collection of songs for almost a decade now. Originally thought that we were going to license it as a technology. So the founding business model was to build this and then through an API, through an application interface, give access to it from other retailers. So websites, portals, even brick and mortar stores. They all could have access to it as a recommendation tool. So you'd be on Amazon or AOL browsing music and you'd find something you like, and they could call the Music Genome Project and we'd send back a list of other songs or records or artists to consider. And we actually chased that business for about 5 years. What wound up happening is we launched in January of 2000, which was right at the sort of apex of the first .com bubble. And we raised our first round of financing in March of that year, which was right when everything collapsed. So we spent about 4 or 5 years just hanging on for dear life. We actually spent about 3 years of that not taking salary. So there were about 45 people who worked for nothing, full or part-time during that period. And for any of you familiar with labor law, you know it's illegal. I don't know if it's illegal in every state, but in California, exempt employees are not allowed to work for nothing. It's a violation of labor law. We happen to also we're headquartered in Oakland, which is the county in the country that's most labor friendly. So it's the wrong place to be violating labor law. But we couldn't afford an attorney at the time, so we didn't even know we were doing it. So we were kind of fat, dumb, and happy. But we managed to survive these 4 or 5 years or so, essentially by not taking salary and build this sort of core database. We now have about a little over 600,000 songs in that collection. And after about, I guess, 4 years, sort of early 2004, finally raised our first big round of financing from some institutional investors. And that was kind of a fork in the road where we sort of had, for the first time in a long time, had some luxury to be able to sit back and kind of think more long term about what we were doing. And we were sitting on top of this huge piece of intellectual property. We hadn't been able to make a business out of it. But through the sort of a revisioning process in the company, we realized that there was a big opportunity to be had in radio. There were kind of a bunch of things that led us there. One was the penetration of broadband. So in those intervening years, household penetration had gone from like 5% to 50 or 60%. And when you're talking about streaming audio, having a good fat pipe is pretty key. So internet radio was beginning to kind of, get its legs in the consumer space. We also realized that the thing we had been building, this very meticulous song-based system, was really perfectly suited to playlisting, so creating playlists and manipulating them. And radio, as it turns out, is the largest piece of the music industry, and was still relatively healthy, but in our view, pretty poorly run. That I think in general, most people are not super happy with commercial music radio. So we saw an opportunity there, really driven by the fact that the internet, unlike broadcast world, is a unicast world where you can actually deliver individual streams to individuals. And in turn, they can actually converse with you. It's a two-way communication, so they can give you feedback. And that provides us a great opportunity to offer, a listening experience that's far superior to what you get on broadcast radio, which is not personalized, that you can't interact with. So we kind of took a left-hand turn and repurposed this huge collection and built a website that sort of took the Genome project, built a bunch of software around it, including some sort of playlist-specific stuff, and then launched Pandora in November of 2005, so about a little over 3 years ago. And I guess almost 3.5 years ago now. It just took off like a rocket ship. We have about 25 million registered listeners now on Pandora, and we add about 1.5 million a month, all through word of mouth. We've never spent any money on advertising, and it's just growing like a weed. And I think there are a bunch of things that are driving that. We certainly are part of this big online viral wave. But I think the reason it's so strong is because most people are really dissatisfied with their relationship to music. I'm sure you guys have this experience as students. You're busy. You don't have time to go to the record store, if there are any even left in the neighborhood. You don't really have time to go browse some kind of, a maze of genres and micro-genres or playlists sharing or whatnot. You don't really have that kind of time. But you still love music, so you're kind of stuck. And I think what Pandora is doing is giving people who face that problem kind of an easy way to sort of get back in the game, discover and rediscover music and sort of get reconnected to it. And that leads to some pretty powerful sort of viral evangelists. We add about 1.5 million a month, and our goal now, which has grown, I think, increasingly ambitious with each of the passing 3 years, is really to kind of completely replace, or close to completely replace, broadcast music radio. And we think there's an opportunity to do that. We're starting to deliver Pandora through devices, so the iPhone and now the BlackBerry recently, which has taken us off the PC, where we have been principally in sort of at work on the computer experience. We're now about 15, almost 20% of our listening's now on a mobile device. And the beauty of that is you can take a mobile device and plug it into your car, or you can dock it in your home audio station. And so we're kind of making a headway in the other big sort of buckets of radio, which is in the car and at home. So kind of little by little, we're sort of with accelerating pace, we're starting to kind of penetrate all these other marketplaces. Connected devices are also getting big, so everything that's being made, all the consumer electronic devices that people make, use at home, which means connected TVs now, connected alarm clocks, Blu-ray DVD players, Sonos systems, all these things. Pandora's starting to get married into those technologies. So really exciting growth. It's all funded through advertising, so we have a huge advertising sales force. About 45 of our 130 people are actually all dedicated to doing advertising sales. Just kind of trying to grow audience and grow revenue. We're not profitable yet, but hope to be within the next few quarters. Yeah.
Are y'all publicly traded?
No, we're privately held. We're funded by venture capital still. So we've done a number of financing rounds since our launch. Yeah, Tim.
Tim, as the newspaper industry is another industry that's trying to figure out how to become profitable in terms of on an advertising only sort of model. Clearly, your overhead costs aren't as big as, say, the New York Times, but how feasible do you think that is in your case?
We're trending, the business model works. So the single biggest liability we have, the single biggest cost is licensing fees, which I'll get into in detail. But there are a handful of characteristics about Pandora that make the advertising supported business viable. One of them is that when people use Pandora, you might think that they launch it, start a station, and this may be how you all use it, and then minimize it while you do something else, while you do work. Excuse me. And we can't advertise to you when you're not looking at it, unless we put audio ads in the stream. As it turns out, though, the average Pandora user goes back to Pandora to do something, to thumb songs up or down, or to skip songs about 7 times an hour. And that average has been almost unchanged for the last 3 years. So that gives us 7 opportunities an hour to put up an ad. And the beauty of that is that because we do it only when someone's interacted with the site, we know they're looking. So that's great for an advertiser. You're not wasting advertising inventory. And the second thing is that Pandora is an auditory service. So it's not competing with visual messaging on the page, which means you can do kind of both at the same time. It's sort of like the back of a cereal box, you know? You can eat your cereal and read the ad. On Pandora, you're listening and reading the ad. And what that means is the metrics behind campaigns for us, things like how often people click through or the sort of recall people have of the campaign are really, really strong. And so we have the money spent on Pandora has returns, which means that advertisers repeat with us at a really high rate. About 80% of advertisers repeat with us, which is pretty close to 100% in the scheme of things. So we have this nice platform that makes advertising work. That's not true of a lot of sites. And I think in the next year, 2 years, you're going to see a serious collapse of a lot of advertising supported businesses. I think one of the challenges the New York Times has is that in order for someone to look at the ad, you've got to take them away from what they've come there for, which is to read an article. So you've got to like pull them off the article and read your ad. And that means that the click-through rates and all those things are lower, which drives down the value of the CPM or the advertising rate card. I think the next 12, 18 months is going to be kind of a time of reckoning in advertising supported world. But Pandora's growing fast on the advertising side, so we're very optimistic about it. So that's kind of the big, broad picture of where the business is going. Now to get into kind of some of the legal and legislative stuff. We pay 2 forms of license for every song that we stream. One is a publishing fee, which works out to about 3.5% of our revenue, and that's paid to composers. We pay that money to collection agencies, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, who are organizations that essentially take that money in, turn around, and disperse it to the artists. The second fee that we pay is called a performance fee, and that is paid to the performers. And again, we collect that, send one check to an organization called Sound Exchange, which is sort of the performance or digital performance equivalent of ASCAP. They collect that money and turn around and pay it out to artists. And by law, they're required to give half of that money to the artist and half to the label. It's got a lot of wonderful benefits as a system, probably the principle of which is that it's a one-stop shop. So because it's a federal compulsory license, so musicians are compelled to give Pandora the right, we sign one piece of paper and we can play absolutely anything. No artist can prevent us from playing their music, and we don't have to get permission. So we don't have to spend all the the extravagant legal costs it would take just to track people down and get agreements and renegotiate them every 12 months, 18 months. Pandora has a statutory license. It's called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that allows us to sort of operate in a really efficient way. So that's good. The second thing that's great about it, and this is for musicians, is when you pay $1 into this kitty, by law, it's required to be split, half to the musician and half to the artist. The alternative is the world of direct deals, where if there wasn't a federal statutory option, our only alternative would be to go directly to labels and artists and actually negotiate for specific licenses on a per label or per artist basis. And obviously that's incredibly inefficient. We couldn't afford to do that. But in a direct deal scenario, when we pay the $1, instead of paying the $1 to Sound Exchange, we pay it to the label. And in that world, the revenue gets recognized the same way CD revenue gets recognized, which means the artist doesn't get very much of it, a nickel, and it's all recouped. So the same way an artist makes a record, they don't see a penny until their royalty, until the cost of making the record and all sorts of other costs are recouped out of their 5, 7, 8%. This dollar comes in through that same door. So for an artist, there's a lot to recommend this sort of federal statutory license. The way the law is structured, every 5 years, a 3-person panel from the Copyright Office is empowered to rule on what the performance fee should be. So the DMCA doesn't actually mandate the fee itself. It just says every 5 years, this panel will get together and determine what it's going to be for the ensuing 5 years. And they give them essentially guideline language. That panel in March '07 came out with its 2006-2010 ruling. So it's actually retroactive for a year. And they just came out with this wildly wrong answer, essentially. After a pretty extensive hearing process, too, where they heard from a lot of people all around the table, labels and webcasters, Pandora wasn't a party to it. We actually weren't in existence as a radio service when the hearing was kicked off. But the rate that they came up with was wildly too high. And I think it's because the panelists, the arbitration judges, didn't understand the issue. And if you read their opinions, you can actually see what they misunderstood about it. And so all of a sudden, we were in this very precarious position because the one licensing structure we had suddenly become completely unaffordable for us. And so we actually were going to shut down back in 2007. We had a board meeting just a few days later. When your venture capital is supporting you and you're not making money, if a ruling comes along that kind of screws your business model, they don't waste time because they don't want to throw good money after bad. So we tried to appeal. We appealed the panel's decision. They wouldn't even hear our appeal. We appealed to record labels. They weren't interested because they want us to be in the direct deal business. They love an unaffordable federal license because it gives them ultimate control. And there's a federal appeals process, but that takes a couple years, which we didn't have time. We're actually in that now, but at the time, we couldn't last that long. So we wound up instead going directly to Congress. We organized a big political campaign. It was kind of a Hail Mary because we had never done this before. We had, I think, about 4 million listeners at the time. This is back in '07, summer, so a couple months later. And we emailed all of our listeners and asked them to call or fax their representative. And because when people register on Pandora, they give us their zip code, we know we can send them an email that actually gives the name and phone number for that representative. The response was just overwhelming. It was like a tidal wave. They had 400,000 faxes in 3 days sent to Washington. The whole fax infrastructure on the Hill was shut down for a week from constituent faxes and phones you couldn't get through on a phone. And this sort of the magnitude of the political pressure caused Congress to actually intervene. So a law was introduced called the Internet Radio, or bill rather, was introduced called the Internet Radio Equality Act that quickly accumulated about 150 sponsors. So representatives coming out in favor of putting their name on the bill. And Congress convened a meeting in Washington with the RIAA, the Record Industry Association, and Pandora and a handful of other services, and basically said, something's gone, wrong here, and you need to fix it. If you don't fix it, we're going to legislate a new answer, which is not what the RIAA wanted. They didn't want legislators determining their future. So we've renegotiated. We're just about to finish that now. After 2 years, it took 2 years, even after Congress said get it done right away. It's taken over 2 years. And all thanks to just raw grassroots, political pressure, which if you'd asked anybody in Washington with any experience in lobbying whether this would be possible, they said no way. One, it takes an enormous amount of attention to get the attention of Congress. They wound up with over 2 million faxes and phone calls from constituents on this topic, which is more than they received on the Iraq War. Believe it or not. Yeah. That's pretty sad. Not for us, but for the country. It was just such an overwhelming political kind of firestorm that Congress sort of intervened, which they don't tend to do. Congress doesn't like to get involved when there's a statute and a pre-existing law in place and there's a process. They don't like to go intervene. But I certainly come out of this with a real, very positive view of representative politics. Now, Pandora has a particularly effective way of igniting listeners. But we know now that we're kind of have some protection because, we're not, now we're instead of 4 million, we're 25 million. So woe be unto he who comes back from Congress and tries to mess with us again. We'll make sure they don't get reelected. But we don't intend to abuse that. And as a company, we're fully supportive of paying royalties. We were hit with a fee that was like 70% of our gross revenue. It was just utterly absurd. And this is in the context of a radio industry where broadcast radio pays no performance fee. So AM/FM does not pay this at all. If you're an artist and you get broadcast over the air, you don't get a performance royalty. And if you get broadcast on XM Sirius, they pay about 7.5% of their revenue in these performance royalties. So you've got 0 for broadcast, 7.5% for XM Sirius, and 70% for webcasters. And that's based on kind of a well-monetized radio business, yeah.
So what was their theory or justification for making your 70%?
I think the reason that difference happened was really about power in Washington. I mean, the shenanigans happened back in like 2001, and what happened was they got the record labels were able to change the language in the DMCA, the standard essentially, that was used to determine our performance fee. It went from kind of a pretty holistic sort of multi-criteria standard that allowed the arbitration judges to take into account things like the promotional value of being on radio, the investment that the companies make, webcasters make in delivering these services, the benefit to the public, et cetera. It allowed them to take that into account. That's why broadcast gets this benefit. Our standard was changed to what's called willing buyer, willing seller. That's the standard that was set. And there's no precedent for this industry, so the arbitration judges just kind of cast around for the closest comparable market that had been set up. So they could say, oh, there's a willing buyer, willing seller over here. That's kind of like your business, so let's make it something like that. They chose a business that offers on-demand music, subscription services as the comparable, which is just a completely different business. And so, the judges were bound by this this language, so their hands were a little bit tied, but still, they essentially bought the entire argument from record labels and gave them their answer. Even the labels were shocked at what came. Nobody expected it to be somewhere in the middle, but that's not how the judges ruled. So our sort of next priority as a company is to establish some degree of parity across these different forms of radio. Because, as I said earlier, you can now get Pandora in a car. You can get it at home. You can get it in all the places you get broadcast radio. Why should we pay 10 times the royalty rate? If you're in your car, you plug Pandora in with the iPhone, or you listen to XM Sirius, or you listen to HTUL. The performance fee is radically different, but as a listener, it's kind of all the same to you. It's music coming through your speakers. So we have sort of a pretty significant legislative agenda in the coming years, and we've spent a lot of time in Washington. I've been on hill walks a bunch of times. Just you walk around Congress and you meet with senators and representatives and their staff, and the beauty of it is that every staffer on the Hill is a Pandora fan. So we get the red carpet rolled out for us when we come in to do meetings, and staffers are the one who write legislation. So if you have them on your side, you're in good shape. So it's the first time I'd worn a tie in a long time going on the Hill in the last year.
Tim, are you all support? We have Reed Wick here, who's with the Recording Academy, and the Recording Academy is one of the principal sponsors of the Music First Coalition. Is that what's Pandora's sort of take on that piece of legislation, and is that something y'all are supportive of?
Well, we're completely abstaining from it until our thing is done.
Yeah.
Once our thing is done, as a musician, I'm fully supportive. Of course, I'm a member of Sound Exchange. I'm a recording artist. Well, I don't do it anymore, but I'm in that category. But Pandora is not participating in that till till our deal is finished. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And that's clearly, I think, a huge priority for artists, is getting this exemption removed for broadcast radio so they can start getting royalties, which is what Music First is trying to do.
Wouldn't that help establish the parity that you're talking about, though?
Mm-hmm. But we're sort of tired of being the kid that gets kicked around. We need to get our deal done, and then we'll be, then we can talk. But it's for what's happened in the last couple of years is this royalty thing has really wreaked havoc in webcasters. The two other largest webcasters, Yahoo and AOL, have thrown in the towel. They abandoned this business and sold it off to CBS, who now runs their web radio. And in fact, the personalized part of Yahoo has now been shuttered completely, the thing called Launchcast. It's been replaced by sort of the CBS radio product. And it's because the licensing fees made it untenable. And I think that, to me, one of the real, I was going to use the word crime, that's too strong a word. One of the terrible consequences of this process is that the interests of artists are not being well represented. So there are groups advocating for this royalty fee. And through this avocation, what's actually happening is it's wreaking havoc on an industry that's fundamentally supportive of artists. So, Pandora has boxfuls of CDs every day from artists who are dying to get their music on Pandora, and who would do it for free. I can tell you that. I'm a musician myself, and I know that if I had the choice between no Pandora with a high fee or Pandora where I wasn't even getting paid at all, every day of the week I'd pick Pandora, because radio is an important vehicle for me. And it's especially true if you're a working musician, because you don't get played on broadcast radio. So there's been a real imbalance in terms of the representation of the interests of artists in this process. And I think under the sort of umbrella or the soundbite of artists should be paid more royalties, and kind of rallying that rallying cry, it's actually hurting artists. Because the loss of Launchcast, the sort of consolidation of these various web properties, all that's doing is reducing the pipeline through which artists can get discovered. And again, I'm a huge believer in paying royalties. I don't disagree with that, but if you turn that screw so tightly that you actually reduce the sort of market for this, you're actually hurting musicians. And in fact, about 7,000 musicians joined and signed this petition for us when we were trying to rally Congress around it. So, you know, there are very, very competing agendas on the other side of this negotiation. We have our own issues between large webcasters, small webcasters, et cetera, but on the other side, there's big labels, independent labels, and artists. And they have very different ideas of what this answer should be. So it's been a really kind of interesting kind of legal/legislative equation for the last couple of years. The other thing is Pandora is only legal in the U.S. So one of the really unfortunate characteristics of the music industry is that, you know, international licensing is a real bear. It's kind of a jungle. If Pandora wanted to launch its service in another country, we'd have to get direct deals country by country with every artist, because there's no equivalent of the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, in other countries. And we actually were, when we launched Pandora initially, you could access it from outside the US. The only thing you needed to do was type in a US zip code and pretend you were a US resident. Our most popular zip code was 90210 for the first year. It's true, by a long margin. Another sad truth. We ended up having to block people because the labels threatened to sue us. So about a year in, we built and instituted IP blocking so we could sniff people out. But it was growing faster outside the US than it was in the US. And that was at a time when our catalog was really America-centric. And now it's become much broader. So I can't wait to, you know, hopefully settle this thing and take that as a template and then just go and pop it into the EU and East Asia and, you know, Australia and, you know, Mexico and Canada, and just kind of get on with it, because it's just so utterly absurd that these services are not being played. I mean, consumers are screaming for them. Pandora is the largest driver of sales to iTunes and Amazon. We drive more sales from those websites than any other site. We should be, you know, the record label should be falling over itself to make Pandora available in other countries, because it's nothing but good. 45% of people who use Pandora say they're buying more music since they started, and only 1% are buying less. And I hope that soon that story will be sort of that will crescendo to a level where, you know, musicians finally just stand up and say, enough of this. Like, you know, let's get out of the way and get these services out there, because it's really detrimental. But I think that's because within the record industry there are competing interests. And I think over time we'll see that happen, and hopefully it won't take super long. But that's kind of like overarching story. Are there any particular parts of this you guys want to know more about, or yeah?
I'm not familiar with the sound exchange. What is that? Is that when you get, I mean, it also, I guess a two-part question. You could kind of explain the process of getting a song or coming across a new one and putting it through the database and putting out there. Where does that all come from? Do you have a staff that looks out for that? Or? Yeah,
so we have about 40 people in the music genome sort of operation, and one of their jobs is to curate it. So we get music that comes in from all over the place, from, you know, independent submissions. So we do get sort of CDs sent in that are, you know, blank CD-ROMs with the track titles written in Sharpie on the CD, and that will go into Pandora if it meets sort of our quality threshold. And we get, you know, the latest releases from the majors as well, which is ironic. You know, they're sending us their music too, and sometimes pre-street, because they want to get on Pandora as quickly as possible. And then listeners recommend a lot of stuff to us, which happens either explicitly by sending us emails saying, you know, hey, I heard this great new band at the Maple Leaf on Thursday. You should check them out. They also do that by searching for stuff that we don't have. So we're kind of monitoring the searches and keeping an eye on, you know, what comes up with any frequency that we don't have. We'll go check it out. So that's kind of the flow of music. About 30% of it actually winds up in the genome, and that's a function of editorial sort of quality that we determine. And then on the Sound Exchange side, it's the musician's responsibility to register with Sound Exchange, the same way you register with ASCAP. You got to just join. I think it's free, or maybe there's a one-time $30 membership charge. Once you're in Sound Exchange, We send a census report to them every month that literally lists every single song that we play and how many times we played it, and a check along with it for all that, sort of all those songs times the amount of money we pay per track. And then Sound Exchange, I think they have a minimum of $1 or $5 or something before they cut a check to a musician, but they sort of warehouse the money and send it out. And they actually keep 50% of the money that comes in their door because they don't have a mailing address for the musicians. So a lot of musicians don't know about this yet. It's not surprising. They will eventually, but that's kind of the way it's set up. Yeah.
How long does it take one of your employees to listen to a song and identify the different components for a first listen?
So for like a really simple 3-minute pop song, about 15 minutes. And a symphony could take 2 hours. Yeah. It's kind of absurd, really, I mean, as an approach. But it's what makes the service work. It's like when you also thumb songs up and down, and we have 3 billion thumbs so far on Pandora, we can actually kind of translate that into musicological information. So we can kind of start to glean from, based on your thumb patterns, what you may or may not want sort of musically in the station. So if you keep thumbing down songs that have chromatic harmony, we'll reduce the chromatic harmony level in your station. It's kind of like our secret sauce.
So y'all actually like log what songs have chromatic harmony or things like that?
Oh yeah. We know like the hi-hat pattern, and the level of counterpoint, and
Some notes they use in the melody and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do. We track the harmonic and melodic content. We don't do like chord progressions and that don't get quite into that detail, but it's pretty ridiculous. 400 attributes.
Really?
Yeah. So.
As individual stations become more and more tailored to their listening, isn't that going to decrease the click-through the interaction with the site and the click-through value?
It doesn't. So
Okay.
you'd think so, but it doesn't. Yeah, the people continue to click 7 times an hour, and they continue to thumb, and we continue to put new music in. So there's still lots of reasons to go back, and it's a decent hypothesis, but it turns out, no, they keep coming back. Thank God. Yeah. If they don't, we'll start putting in bad music, so they have to.
As sort of regrettable as broadcast radio is to most of us today, when satellite radio hasn't really taken off, and,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons that has been attributed to that is that there's no localism. And so I wonder, how does Pandora have any sort of any plans to address the localism aspect of broadcast media or streaming media? Or is that something you think that consumers want these days?
I think that there are lots of ways to bring local information into the service. We wouldn't do it by, say, playing local music. That's not something we really think it would be a strategically important thing for us to do. But, for example, you could be listening to a station and you might thumb a song up and Pandora could say, oh, you like that band? They're playing in New Orleans on Thursday. Or if you like that band, there's a band that sounds like them playing in New Orleans on Thursday, and here's the club, and buy a ticket. Or if you opted in as a listener to get recommendations, we could send you a note when a good band, a band you like or you thumbed up, is coming to town. So we can kind of connect you locally. We can certainly bring in weather, sports, news, and just kind of license that into Pandora. We could do that. That's not difficult. And that would be part of the roadmap eventually.
And it's all set up because of the zip code.
Exactly. So there's lots of potential.
Thinking along those same lines, do y'all do this now or have thought about, say, as you collect that information and you do have the zip codes to go by, thumbs up kinds of things, and then relate that information back to either majors or indie labels about where to put more support into a band?
Yeah.
Have
So
y'all done that kind of thing, or?
we haven't done it yet, but that's on our roadmap.
Because that sounds like a great way to generate some more, income for the organizations.
Yeah, we don't really see that as an income source. 'Cause all those businesses pale in comparison to what you can drive through advertising. So rather than try to kind of make them for profit, we just treat them as value-added dimensions of Pandora for musicians. And so, the vision would be someday a musician could log into Pandora and look up whatever they want,
So I'm getting
where my
logged into
song's
Royalties,
getting
maybe
played.
I should go play down there,
Exactly.
save some advertising dollars.
Like maybe plot it on a map for them so they could actually just connect the dots of the clusters of thumb-uppers for their music, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
That's all going to happen, just a matter of time,
During y'all time on the Hill, was there any discussion about maybe collaborating with the European Union about getting some kind of collaborative deal together to let y'all move overseas? I mean, I guess that would seem to me at first glance, to be a good opportunity since they're kind of, centrally, I guess you could say, governed. But I know, because you have to go to each separate country and get, permission. But was there any talk about that, or is that just an idea that hasn't been really entertained yet?
No, those talks are going on. And I think once things do really get finalized here, a lot of that will develop a lot more momentum. And it certainly makes sense that let one country do all the negotiating like we've done here and kind of beat themselves bloody over the numbers, and then make it easy to replicate. Because you could say, look, this has been very, very intensely negotiated. We don't need to go through that again. This is clearly the right answer. And then use these centralized institutions like the EU to make it sort of to make it easy to migrate. So we may well be in Parliament, arguing for this by the end of the year, but whatever it takes. Yeah.
What have you seen as like XM's response to y'all, and I should first ask, what's the impact that you've had on different like XM and Sirius and all those other satellite radio companies?
I don't know what our direct impact is. I mean, we're still relatively small in the scheme of things. I mean, Pandora's market share of overall radio is less than 1%, a little less than 1% right now. I think satellite as an industry, its problems are not really related to Pandora. They're related to, I think issues of the service itself, the cost. People are less and less inclined to pay subscriptions for services like that, and of course the problems of the car industry. So I don't think that what they're suffering right now is really directly correlated to us. I do think as far as their go forward strategy, they should take a look at the growth of connected radio, where the Pandora-like services, and recognize that as a problem for them. Because XM Sirius is broadcast radio. It's coming through a different, it's coming through a satellite. But you pick through a certain number of pre-programmed stations. It's essentially broadcast radio, and personalized radio is just a lot better. And we're getting into cars now, so yeah, we're coming after them.
And what do you foresee yourself like putting any further demands on the user, like maybe charging a fee once you realize that we become completely reliant on you for our music? I mean, I have.
Like the first hit of crack is free. We'll always have a free version. We have a subscription version now, but we don't intend to like flip the switch and go paid at some point with a captive audience. That's not our strategy. The question is kind of how much do we add to the subscription service to make it more worthwhile is really more how we think about it. And the trade-off will largely be about ads or no ads, and that's for the listener to kind of decide.
And do you foresee possibly that the free version will have like inserted ads between songs?
Oh, it will.
Okay.
But it's not going to be anything like what you see here on broadcast radio. So we already do some of it. The typical length of an ad is 10 to 15 seconds, and you might hear them a couple times an hour. It's not going to be the load. It's not going to be what you think.
I've never heard it before.
Well, they're demographically targeted, so you might not be the demo that the given product was going after.
That's great. Great. Yeah, it's a law student, man.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Future plans to integrate Pandora into cars more, other than via the iPhone and BlackBerry. That's going to remove the visual interface. Are there plans to create radio devices that use Pandora?
In the car?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's already happening. And that actually Ford announced it at CES last year. They're going to integrate Pandora into the dashboard, so through sync. So the phone will bring the connectivity, but the application, Pandora, will be embedded in the car. And so you'll be able to control it from the knobs too on the dashboard, skip and
Still
stuff.
have the visual, so you're still, like the visual display.
It'll
so
be
you're
on
still-
your nav screen.
So you'll still have the advertising base there.
No, so it'll be on the screen, but our expectation and our hope is that you won't be looking at it. So we won't be using visual advertising in the car. It'll be audio advertising. Yeah.
I guess you'd kind of alter it, that you wouldn't be able to buy music through iTunes in your car. with the
Yeah, voice activated.
Oh, okay.
You'll be able to get in the car and say, "Launch my Dave Matthews Band station." Bam, on it goes. It'll once it's really well integrated into the car, it's going to be pretty spectacular, I think. And I don't know if any of you have used this in Pandora in the car, but I used it for the first time myself just a few months ago. I don't drive very often, and it was a really kind of eye-opening experience for me. And I realized how accustomed I had been in the car to broadcast radio. It was the same feeling I had the first time I used a Walkman a long time ago. You know, where I walked around with my music piping into just my ears. And before the Walkman, which is probably hard to remember, there wasn't that, right? You could go home, okay, plug your headphones into your stereo, but people didn't do that very much. You know, music was just kind of, it was in the air. And all of a sudden, you had this little personal device that became like a little private music world. And it was really wild. I remember the first time walking around, like, nobody can hear what I'm hearing right now. And it was really, and I had the same experience in the car where I was driving along thinking, wow, man, this radio station has just got me nailed. I'm like, oh, that's right, it's mine, you know? And then I skipped a song that I didn't like. Same thing, wait, I'm in a car and I just skipped a song on the radio? That's not right, you know? And I realized how much I have been conditioned to being a very passive consumer of music in the car. And you know, some people get pretty techie and plug their iPods in, or they have CD changers, which they never refresh. You know, the average CD changer in a car, in the lifetime of a car, has a total of 3 CDs put in it, of a 5 CD changer. That's like when you can refresh it, right? So people don't use them. And we know, right, how many times do you go back and like open the hood and, you know, pull it out and you know, swap it all out? It's like too much administration. And so I think when you experience this personalized radio in a car, you realize, like, I'm never going back, you know? Yeah.
What's the future on the skipping songs restrictions? Like, you can only skip so many songs.
Yeah, that'll be there. 6 an hour is the, and that number is actually not mandated by the DMCA, but it's kind of come to be seen as the acceptable level of interactivity to still remain eligible for that license. If you could skip too often, you'd effectively have song on demand. You could skip forward to the song you wanted to hear, and then you'd start to cannibalize retail, and that's where you kind of cross the line.
Going back to y'all's beginnings, when you pitched the idea to the venture capitalists, did y'all have to do extensive marketing research to say, hey, this is good, or they were just on with it from the get-go? And then also, does the thumbs down, thumbs up approach, and all the feedback that the consumer, the customer can get, does that kind of replace a lot, like a big chunk of the research that most companies have to do for marketing aspect?
So the first round of financing we raised was really kind of a paper napkin type of fundraise, where we had a business plan, but fundamentally it was getting excited about an idea. You know, we had high-level numbers about the market and how much we would grow it and how everybody would be, you know, fabulously wealthy. But there was sort of some, you know, small reason to believe it could be a huge idea. More than anything, it was like, this is really interesting, and I want to be a part of this. That's the first fundraise. Later on, became much more about metrics and so on. Although in 04 we had failed as a business. So that was another idea fundraise. People thought, now they've got this 600,000, I'd say it was like maybe 400,000 or 200,000 then. They've got this great piece of intellectual property. We'll figure out what to do with it. So we had actually something to show, and it worked. There was a working demo that really kind of, I think, was pretty eye-popping. The rounds since then have been all about financial projections and consumer adoption, and you can a lot more hooks to hang on and evaluate the business. And then the metric stuff, yeah, I think it'll be very useful for marketing. And we get a lot of labels that contact us asking for access to it. I think that'll become more common. Yeah.
Tim, how do you anticipate, I know there's a lot of stimulus, like money in the stimulus package for broadband infrastructure development into rural areas. Is that something that y'all have looked at or aware of, and how, you know, the chances of expansion for Pandora?
I haven't really, I don't know the details of that at all. You know, money invested in connectivity is all good news for Pandora. I wouldn't say that yeah, I mean, ubiquitous access is good. So we're all for it, you know. I don't think it's going to materially change our business prospects right now because, you know, as far as for advertisers go, you know, the regions that are underserved for connectivity are generally underserved or are not the economic opportunity, you know, for a brand advertiser. Mm-hmm. But still, you know, the more people are listening, the better. So, yeah.
As far as the music genome project and all that information you have on each song, have you considered using that information for anything outside of Pandora, for some other use or business? Or?
Well, we used to license it as a recommendation tool before Pandora, but it wasn't a very good business. And most of the alternatives that we see would just be distracting to us. They might be like licensing it for music supervision or for, you know, things like that. They're not very big businesses, and it would require supporting a separate product and a separate customer base. And we're completely underwater just trying to keep up with our own website. You know, the idea of, you know, peeling off a whole new business line is, I think, would be unwise for us.
Is it something that you could just sell outright to another group?
Sell.
You wouldn't want to do that.
Sell Pandora?
No, sell, like, I don't know how you have it, the 400 attributes, like on paper about a song.
Oh yeah, no, we won't be selling that to anybody. Yeah. That's our, you know, that's really our. Yeah, exactly.
Might you be moving to like other radio markets, or like talk radio or sports, comedy, and all that?
We won't. We'll integrate those. So we'll go to somebody else who maybe specializes in that or aggregates those things and pull them in. But we wouldn't, you know, build like a comedy genome. If that, we won't be doing that. There are people building other genomes. It's like the wine genome someone's building right now, and someone I think is building the art genome. Try to help people with browsable art, and the movie genome is being built too. But that won't be for us.
I just want to say thank you too, because I mean, the service that you provide, it's my one means of getting to learn new music. I've never bought iTunes before until I started getting on Pandora.
Oh, awesome.
And bands that I couldn't access through I don't know, just CD stores or music stores. I went to iTunes again, and that's solely because I found them through Pandora. So I appreciate the service that you do provide, and it's changed my life.
Well, thank you.
Also,
that's great to hear.
Andrew Duhon is a budding artist in New Orleans, and he just sent his CD to you, and he's probably mad at me. He's probably mad at me if I didn't tell you that it's probably in your best interest to get him on there. Break
All
down
right.
components and send it out.
I keep myself completely removed from that process for obvious reasons, but I wish him luck.
What is that process of putting an artist into the playlist?
We listen to it and decide. It's like an audition. I mean, it's that simple. And it's sort of a qualitative, you know, it's done by trained musicians. So, you know, it's not, do I like it? It's the question they ask is, for what it's trying to accomplish, is it doing it well? And for the audience that will listen to this kind of music, is this going to increase the quality of their listening experience? So it could be some kind of really weird lo-fi grunge thing, which you might not like, but you can, as a trained musician, you know, you can recognize talent, you can recognize it being done well. That's what we try to do.
Is the first screening process for a new song the 400 attributes, or is there someone that listens to it first?
It's the listening, it's a listening audition. Yeah, and then if it gets passed through, then it gets onto the shelf and they analyze it. Yeah.
For people who do that whole thing where they listen to stuff and then they do the analysis, like, do you guys have requirements for when you hire people who do those things? Like, obviously they're musicians, but do they have to have degrees or certain kind of backgrounds?
Yeah, they have to have serious chops in music theory. So by and large, they all have degrees. I don't think anybody in our team doesn't have at least an undergraduate musical degree. And they take an exam to join. So they take they do a song analysis, and they actually, you know, if you read the answers they give, like these are hardcore, you know, they can chart out songs and describe everything that's happening like in an instant. So unfortunately, there's a lot of underemployed musicians around, you know, who are super talented, and this kind of a job is just, you know, it's made in heaven
Are they
for
all them.
them.
Based in one location? or
Yeah, in
all
Oakland.
over?
In Oakland, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the more senior analysts we allow to do it off premises, but by and large, they do it on campus or in the office.
Foreseeing that, you know, some sort of balance comes out in the, I guess, the new percentages that are determined for the licensing royalties.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as a business model, I'm guessing you guys have some kind of proactive approach. What do you see as the upcoming challenges that'll come after that in the copyright world? Because it's only a matter of time before there's another, I guess, legal battle when it comes to copyright issues and an ever-evolving music industry.
Yeah. There's probably a bunch of different angles people could come at Pandora from.
They tried to peg you as an interactive service before. haven't they?
Yeah, that's one of the arguments. That's probably the most likely, I'd say. But you know, you'd be on pretty tenuous ground to go through this big negotiation and work everything out, and then like 6 months later come back and sue them for something else. You know, at some point you just lose all credibility. You know, we get frequently sued over patents. But those are generally patent trolls. So they're law firms who just buy a patent and then go chase money. They don't intend to make a business out of it, but they just try to create a nuisance lawsuit so you buy your way out of it. And you know, even for us, a non-profitable but growing company, you know, those come along. That's probably more of where our money's going to go in the next, you know, X years than anywhere else. It's you know, it's a bit of a, you know, it's a problem in the legal, in the world of law, in our opinion. I understand why it's there. It's designed to protect the inventor who, you know, like the window wiper guy, you know, who does get taken advantage of, but it has unintended consequences too. So.
Does your company have a policy, or is it a case-by-case basis?
Yeah, it's case by case. Yeah.
Got time for maybe one more?
No way, guys. No way, guys. Question. I'm terrified when I hit the thumbs down button because let's say the Decembers come on, and the lead singer of the Decembers, I just can't handle his voice, but I love like their music on the back. How should I be prudent when I'm hitting this because I don't want you guys to interpret my thumbs down as I'm just you know, I don't like the music because I like it, but it's this guy's voice.
Yeah, it's a bit of a blunt instrument right now in terms of, you know, if you thumb down several Decemberist songs in a row on a station, we'd stop playing them altogether. Actually, their bass player was an analyst for a while, a music analyst for us. So I'll let him know. The way we get around that, and we've worked on this for a while, is the ability to thumb down an attribute. So giving you the ability to go in and say, I don't like the voice, or I like the guitar solo or something. And we have the sort of technical infrastructure to do that. It's possible. It's a very challenging user interface proposition. And it's hard to do it in a way that you deliver on the promise you're making to somebody. So that when they do go in and thumb down or thumb up an attribute, they're happy with what happens. And we're still working that out. We actually had, we did a little survey of users for a while back when we were architecting this feature, and every time someone thumbed up or down a song, we actually prompted them with a little dialogue box with the question why written above it. So we just wanted to see what they would say about why they had thumbed up or thumbed down a song, so we could kind of collect sort of, all of the reasons people gave. One of the reasons someone gave after having thumbed down a song, they wrote, when we have to ask them why, their answer was, "Come on, man, it's Journey." So we're going to have a "Come on, man, it's Journey" feature on.
How much rate did you get from those text boxes?
It's kind of all over the map. Less musicological than we had hoped. So more stuff like, that band's really uncool, or stuff like there's stuff like it's too high-level things, like it's too busy, too loud, or too mellow, or too cheesy, or too, and then some number of responses that were musicological. So it's going to be a tricky feature, and I would love to build it because it would be fun.
Yeah, I would enjoy reading.
I don't know how often people would use it, though. I think there'd be a novelty to it, but we are fundamental believers in simplicity. So we try to stay away from the temptation to get too crazy.
What about creating a feature that, 2 thumbs up or 3 thumbs up? Because there's songs that come on that I really, really like, and that I want that certain station to follow more of that path than others. But I still like these other songs.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
That Launchcast kind of thing where they did like 4 stars.
4 stars, yeah.
Whatever.
We went back and forth a lot about how many options should we give people. And what's interesting is when you add choices, in general, you get people get confused, and the overall user experience degrades. On the purchase on Pandora, this iTunes and Amazon, adding a 3rd purchase would probably decrease our sales, because people get it's really a learning experience to go through this with websites, and you all are solidly in the power user category. Trust me, like the top 0.5 percentile in terms of your understanding of technology, your comfort with websites, your ability to navigate through things. Most people have a fraction of your patience for things and your comfort with this kind of stuff. And so going from thumbs up to thumbs down to thumbs are really up. Someone asked, could you give us on the finger if you don't like it at all? To that kind would be, for most people, would deter them from using the feature at all. So it's tricky. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, sure.